Development for whom? On Manning Marable's How Capitalism Underdeveloped Black America. Manning Marable published How Capitalism Underdeveloped Black America: Problems in Race, Political Economy, and Society. In 1983, borrowing its title structure directly from Walter Rodney's How Europe Underdeveloped Africa, 1972. The borrowing is deliberate and programmatic. Marable wants readers to understand the economic condition of Black America not as a story of lagging development, of a population that simply started further behind and has not yet caught up, but as a story of active, ongoing underdevelopment in which Black communities have been and continue to be systematically structured to generate wealth for a white-dominated capitalist economy while being denied the capacity to develop independent economic power of their own. It is a work of Marxist political economy applied to the specific historical experience of African Americans, and it remains one of the most ambitious attempts to fuse the Black radical tradition with a rigorous account of American capitalism's structure. The core argument: Marable's framework rests on an internal colonialism model, adapted from theorists like Robert Blanner and Kwame Ture and Charles Hamilton's Black Power, and extended by Marable across the full sweep of African American history from slavery through the early 1980s. The argument holds that Black America occupies a structural position within the U.S. economy, analogous to that of a colony within an imperial system, a source of cheap, controllable labor, and later a captive market for goods and services, systematically prevented from accumulating capital, developing autonomous economic institutions, or exercising control over the resources generated within Black communities. Under slavery, this took the form of direct, total extraction of labor value. Under Jim Crow, it took the form of sharecropping, debt peonage, and exclusion from unionized industrial labor. In the 20th century urban North, Marable argues, it took the form of residential segregation, redlining, predatory retail and lending practices within the ghetto, and a labor market that relegated Black workers disproportionately to the most precarious, lowest wage, and first to be automated sectors of the economy. Crucially, Marable insists this is not a story of neglect or exclusion in the passive sense. Black America was not simply left out of American capitalist development, but a story of active, functional integration on exploitative terms. Black labor and Black consumer markets were, and remain, structurally necessary to American capitalism's profitability, which is precisely why the underdevelopment persists rather than resolving itself through market processes or gradual inclusion. From this diagnosis follows Marable's prescription, which is explicitly socialist rather than reformist. Because the underdevelopment is generated by capitalism's basic operation rather than by remediable prejudice or policy failure, Marable argues that racial equality is not achievable within a capitalist framework at all, and that Black liberation requires a broader transformation of the political economic system itself, achieved through interracial working-class organizing that does not subordinate racial justice to class politics or the reverse. Third, what the book gets right. The book's central achievement is its refusal to treat racial economic inequality in the United States as a problem of individual disadvantage, cultural deficiency, or even discrete discriminatory policies that could, in principle, be legislated away one at a time. By framing Black economic life as a coherent, historically continuous system, one that changes its specific institutional form across slavery, Jim Crow, and the post-industrial urban economy while preserving its basic extractive function, Marable gives readers a single analytical thread connecting phenomena usually studied in isolation. Plantation slavery, sharecropping, redlining, deindustrialization, and ghetto retail markup are treated not as separate historical episodes, but as successive expressions of one underlying structural relationship. This is analytically powerful precisely because it resists the comforting assumption, common in both liberal and conservative commentary, that each era's racial economic problems are new, discrete, and solvable on their own terms. The book also stands in the lineage of, and extends, the Black radical tradition's long-standing effort to hold race and class together analytically, rather than treating them as competing explanations. a project traceable through W.E.B. Du Bois' Black Reconstruction in America, 1935, which Marable draws on directly through to contemporaries like Cedric Robinson, whose Black Marxism, 1983, appeared the same year and made a related but distinct argument about the racial foundations of capitalism itself. Marable's contribution within this tradition is to bring the analysis fully into the 20th century, connecting the historical origins of Black economic subordination to the specific mechanisms of the post-war and post-civil rights era economy, including the limits of Black political incorporation into electoral office and the persistence of economic underdevelopment even as formal legal barriers fell. Where the argument strains, the book has drawn sustained criticism, much of it concerning the analytical core of the internal colonialism model itself and the political conclusions Marable draws from it. The internal colonialism analogy has real disanalogies. Critics, including scholars sympathetic to Marable's broader project, have pointed out that Black Americans do not occupy a separate territory, lack a distinct pre-colonial sovereignty being restored, and are U.S. citizens embedded within, rather than administratively separated from, the state that structures their subordination. All features that distinguish the situation meaningfully from classic colonial relationships between metropole and overseas colony. Defenders of the model, including Marable, have responded that it is meant as a structural and functional analogy rather than a literal claim of colonial status. But the tension between the model's rhetorical power and its imprecision as applied social theory has remained a persistent point of debate. The class primary framework can underweight race as an independent force. Marable's Marxist framework treats racial subordination as fundamentally generated by and serving capitalist accumulation, which invites a version of the critique that Cedric Robinson leveled at orthodox Marxism more broadly. That treating race as derivative of class relations risks underestimating the extent to which racial hierarchy has its own historical logic, durability, and capacity to structure outcomes independent of, and sometimes against, the immediate interests of capital. Marable was aware of and engaged this tension more than many earlier Marxist analysts of race, but the book's basic architecture still subordinates racial analysis to a political economic frame that not all scholars in the Black radical tradition accept as sufficient on its own. The book is broad synthesis more than original archival research. Like other ambitious works that survey centuries of history to build a structural argument, How Capitalism Underdeveloped Black America draws heavily on existing historical and sociological scholarship rather than presenting substantial new primary research of its own. This is consistent with its aims. It is a work of political economy and synthesis, not archival history, but it means the book's persuasive force rests on the coherence of its interpretive framework more than on new empirical discovery, and critics have sometimes challenged specific historical claims or periodizations within that synthesis. The prescriptive political program is more asserted than demonstrated Marable's conclusion that only socialist transformation, rather than any form of reform within capitalism, can resolve Black underdevelopment, follows logically from his diagnosis. But the book offers comparatively little sustained engagement with the historical record of interracial working-class movements that Marable's own prescription depends on, including their frequent failures to overcome racial division within the working class itself, a problem the book's framework identifies as central to American labor history, but does not fully resolve as an obstacle to its own proposed solution. The book's snapshot is dated in ways later editions had to address. Written in 1983, the book predates the full unfolding of mass incarceration's expansion, the 1996 welfare reform, and several decades of shifting patterns in Black political incorporation and Black class stratification. Developments significant enough that Marable himself substantially revised the book in later editions, which speaks to both the durability of the underlying framework and the need for real updating as the specific institutional forms of underdevelopment continued to change after the book's initial publication. Shakper, why the book still matters. These criticisms sharpen debate over the book's specific model rather than displacing its core insight, which has proven durable. that racial economic inequality in the United States is not adequately explained as a lagging or incomplete version of a shared national development trajectory, but reflects a structural relationship in which Black economic subordination has been functionally productive for the broader economy across multiple, changing historical forms. That framework continues to inform contemporary analysis of the racial wealth gap, housing discrimination, and labor market segmentation. And it remains one of the central texts through which the Black radical tradition's long argument that racial justice and economic transformation cannot be fully separated reached a wide audience of scholars, activists, and students. Note, this essay engages Marable's arguments in the surrounding scholarly debate in summary and analytic form. For direct engagement with his reasoning, consult the original text alongside Walter Rodney's How Europe Underdeveloped Africa, W.E.B. Du Bois' Black Reconstruction in America, and Cedric Robinson's Black Marxism, each of which the book draws on or runs parallel to.